Cedar Falls, Iowa. Veterans Memorial Park. Morning mist drapes the black granite wall etched with names. Emily Hayes in a hoodie and sweatpants stands alone, holding a pair of worn dog tags. Her thumb brushes the edges. Emily whispers, "You said strength doesn't always mean raising your fists. Today I'm not here to fight. Today is about remembering who I am." She tucks the tags into her pocket, pulls up her hood, and walks toward the red brick gym down the street. Inside the bright silence of IronCrest Jiu-Jitsu Academy, the air smelled faintly of bleach and rubber mats. Sunlight filtered through the tall front windows, casting long rectangles on the blue-gray flooring. Nolan Briggs stood at the center, his posture relaxed, confident, his hands loose at his sides. Around us, students watched in a wide circle, most sitting cross-legged, phones discreetly raised for the live-stream demo. He called my name like he was naming a dog. Emily. Center. No rank. No courtesy. I stepped forward. My GI was plain white, unpatched. I had been training here for just under 5 months, always quiet, always early. Never late. Never loud. He gave no instruction. Just a quick flick of the wrist, and before my weight had fully settled into stance, my legs were gone from under me. I hit the mat with a jarring thud that ricocheted through the floor and up my spine. A few students winced. 1 or 2 laughed. "Try yoga next time," he said, turning to the others with a crooked smirk. Laughter rippled, thin and easy. I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. I stood. Dog tags tucked inside my inner pocket, slipped slightly into view as I rose. Just for a second. Nobody seemed to notice, or if they did, they didn't ask. The mat felt warm beneath my bare feet. I bowed once, then stepped back to the edge of the circle. Briggs resumed his demo like nothing had happened. But something had. Something always did. When someone tried to humiliate you in front of a crowd and you refused to yield to it. I kept my breathing even. The laughter would fade. It always did. At the back wall I found my place again, knees bent, eyes forward still. Beneath the fabric of my GI, my shoulder ached where the scar from Syria still flared on cold mornings. That day it burned just enough to remind me, not of the pain, but of the quiet, of what I was before, and what I hadn't forgotten. I live above a repair shop off Pierce Avenue, 2 rooms stacked over the buzz of compressors and socket wrenches. The landlord's name is Hank, a man who keeps the blinds drawn and likes his coffee burnt. He doesn't ask questions. That's why I rent from him. My flat smells like oil and lemon cleaner. The walls are thin, and the radiators hiss like they're whispering secrets to the cold. There's a cot against one wall, a steel shelf of dog-eared paperbacks, and an old punching bag in the corner. I fix it with duct tape when it tears. I don't hang photographs. There's a photo I keep tucked in a book. I don't look at it often. In the mornings I train. I stretch. I breathe. I run when the snow lets me. I shower and drink black coffee from a metal thermos. Then I drive the 42 minutes up to Mason City in my Toyota, with no second gear and a cracked rear view. That's where the regional rehab center is. I work with veterans. Mostly men. Mostly older. I help them relearn how to move after injury. Sometimes physical. Sometimes not. I don't tell them what I used to be. They sense it. The way I carry myself. The way I watch them. They call me Doc, though I'm not one. I like the work. Keeps me steady. At night, I return to IronCrest. It didn't take long after the demo for things to shift. Briggs started small. Partner drills where he skipped over me. Sparring rounds where he called me last, or paired me with newer students who flailed and apologized. Corrections he barked louder than needed, like I wasn't used to command voice. "You don't lead with your chin," he said one day, loud enough for the back row. "You're not some street fighter." Someone snickered. I didn't turn. The tampering started the second month. My belt went missing one evening. My GI, soaked in water, left rolled behind the lockers. Once someone poured muscle rub into my gloves. I said nothing. Just trained. Quietly. Harder. Videos from the demo found their way online. I saw one during my break at the clinic. Tagged. #IronCrest fails. There were slow-mo edits of the sweep, zoom-ins on my landing. Comments beneath full of laughing emojis. "Try knitting. Is she for real?" One of my clients at the center saw it. He didn't return after that. The receptionist said he'd called to cancel. Said his wife didn't want aggressive rehab anymore. Hank knocked on my door that night. "You still doing that combat stuff?" he asked. I said nothing. He scratched at his neck. "Some folks downstairs said they heard shouting. Maybe stick to yoga or something, yeah? We got kids in the building." I nodded. Then I shut the door. That night I drove to the church. It's not marked by a sign. Just a small red brick structure with sagging gutters and a rusted bell that hasn't rung in 20 years. The VA leases the basement space to the local vet support group. Most people know it as a place where men sit in folding chairs and talk about things they can't say at home. But downstairs, past the kitchen with its single flickering bulb, there's another room. Cement floor. High ceilings. Soft mats duct taped to the concrete walls. An old radio on a shelf. That's where he trains. Master Sergeant Glenn Avery. Retired. He saw me once months ago at the VA. Didn't ask questions. Just nodded at my stance. "You were Corps," he said. I nodded back. "Combatives. Quantico. Instructor." He grunted. "Figures." Now he watches as I run drills. We don't talk much. He just nods or says, "Again." I train there when IronCrest becomes too noisy with its silence. When the locker room starts to feel like a room of eyes. When the mat smells more of showmanship than sweat. I train in the basement. I drill arm bars in silence. Shrimp crawl down the length of the room. Break falls until my back stings. Repetition over reputation. Glenn watches from the folding chair. He doesn't film. He doesn't critique. He just sees. Once, after a particularly long session, I sat on the edge of the mat, sweat soaking through my second GI. He tossed me a water bottle. The label was faded. "You trying for belts?" he asked. I shook my head. "I've got what I need," I said. He nodded. "Good. Belts don't fight." Then he added, "But sometimes you've got to let people see what the silence means." I didn't answer, but I knew what he meant. IronCrest wasn't a place that understood silence. It needed spectacle. So I let them laugh. Let them upload. Let them mock the rhythm they didn't understand. But I trained. I watched. And somewhere deep in the slow, methodical pattern of footwork and breath, something hardened. Not anger. Not revenge. Something quieter. Preparation. And I began to suspect that Glenn Avery wasn't just watching. He was waiting. It started with my rash guard going missing from my locker. Then a strange smell in my GI bleach, almost but sharp, like someone poured it fresh. I kept training anyway. I'd stopped expecting anything from the people at IronCrest. Most of them had fallen in line behind Briggs. When he mocked me now, they laughed quicker. One evening, I returned from the restroom to find someone had replaced the sand in my weighted bag with gravel. The seams tore the next day mid-strike. It split across the side like it was bleeding. Still I trained. One morning I arrived early. My name was gone from the attendance board. "Administrative error," Briggs said. His smile didn't reach his eyes. It was the same morning I saw my own face again on a gym Instagram story. A clip from week 2. The fall. Captioned, "IronCrest teaches resilience." My name wasn't tagged, but I saw 2 students nudging each other when I walked in. One of them smiled too wide, teeth sharp. I stood on the mat. Breathe. The circle closed around me again, Briggs in the center. He waved me over like I was being summoned. "Let's show some basic escapes," he said, too casual. "Emily here can demonstrate. Don't worry, she's tough." I nodded. Stepped forward. He swept me again. Not as hard this time, but hard enough. This time I stayed down an extra breath. "Gotta be quicker than that," he said. "Or maybe take up dance." Laughter. I stood. Met his eyes. "Maybe you need to stop overextending," I said. The room fell silent. Then someone coughed. Briggs's mouth twitched, but he didn't answer. I bowed, stepped back. The next day, one of my clients, Kyle, called to cancel his appointments. Said he was switching providers. When I asked why, he paused. "I saw some videos," he said. "My wife thinks maybe I should work with someone more." He didn't finish. I said nothing. That evening, Hank knocked again. This time, he didn't wait for me to open the door fully. "I've had some calls," he said. "Someone said you were doing sparring up here." We've got rules, you know. No rough stuff near the kids. This ain't a barracks. I told him I'd been quiet. He shrugged. Still, maybe you find somewhere else if you want to keep doing whatever it is you do. He walked away before I could answer. That night I trained harder. In the church basement I worked throws until my joints burned. Glenn watched, arms crossed. You think they'll ever let you be? He asked. No. He nodded. Then don't wait for permission. 2 days later, a letter arrived at IronCrest. Official. Sealed. Addressed to Midwest Jiu-Jitsu Classic organizers. I recognized the envelope. It had Glenn's handwriting. He never told me what it said. But I knew. Because the next week, when I tried to register for the tournament, the IronCrest manager intercepted me. Sorry, she said. Briggs already submitted our entries. You're not on the list. I nodded. Left. That night, Glenn handed me a printout. My name. Bracket position. Round 1 opponent. Nolan Briggs. They tried to block you, he said. I looked at the bracket. They didn't succeed. No, Glenn said. They didn't. I stared at the paper a long time. Then I went downstairs. And began again. Tournament day. The gym was louder than I'd expected. Dozens of voices echoing against high ceilings. The slap of bodies hitting mats. The shrill buzz of scoring timers. The Midwest Jiu-Jitsu Classic had taken over the old university fieldhouse, and every inch of space felt saturated with adrenaline. I arrived early. Wore a plain GI. White belt. No patches. Some of the other competitors glanced over, curious. They didn't recognize me. Most weren't from Cedar Falls. But a few students from IronCrest whispered as I walked by. I didn't look at them. Didn't look for Briggs either. I sat near the far end of the bleachers, laced my belt with deliberate care, and waited. Glenn arrived 10 minutes before brackets were announced. He wore a black fleece jacket, a ball cap low on his brow. He didn't speak. Just handed me a bottle of water and stood behind the railing. I nodded once. Brackets went up on a monitor in the corner. Nolan Briggs versus Emily Carter. Mat 3. First match. I stood when they called my name. My legs felt steady. My hands calm. As I stepped onto the mat, Briggs turned, already in place. His GI was blue. Sleeves tailored. His belt dark purple, tight and proud. He grinned. Really? He said, glancing at my belt. Still white. I bowed. He didn't. The ref signaled. The match began. Briggs moved fast, overconfident. I let him lead. He faked a double leg, tried to bait me into an overhook. I gave him nothing. He circled left, went for a collar grip. I ducked under. Clinched. Swept. He hit the mat flat hard. His eyes widened, surprised. I didn't wait. Knee on belly. He flailed. I transitioned tight, gripped his arm. Trap. Leverage. Turn. Shoulder lock. His body bucked. Tap. 11 seconds. Silence. Then a roar. From the crowd, confusion, then cheers. A few gasped. I rose without a smile. Walked to the edge. Briggs stayed on the mat, stunned. The ref raised my hand. I bowed. Stepped off. Glenn met me at the bottom of the steps. He didn't say anything. Just clasped my arm. You moved, he said. Like you were back in uniform. I nodded. Didn't trust myself to speak. Later that week I left IronCrest. Didn't say goodbye. I packed my gear, turned in my key, and walked out of the place the same way I had walked in, quiet. By then word had spread. The video of the match was everywhere. It had gone viral by day 2. Hashtag 11 seconds. I ignored the comments. I ignored the new messages, the apologies, the sudden invitations to talk about your journey. I rented a new space. An old VFW hall off Route 18. The windows were fogged with age, but the bones were solid. I swept the floor. Repainted the walls. Bought mats secondhand and patched them with elbow grease. On the front wall, beneath a Marine Corps flag, I hung my father's dog tags. He died from ALS when I was 24. Never saw what I became. Never saw me broken either. Just before the first class, I stood beneath those tags and breathed in the silence. It was the only sound I trusted. We opened with 6. 2 from the local VA. 1 from a halfway house. 3 who didn't speak much, Just showed up on time and stayed late. They didn't ask about my record. Didn't need to. The name on the flyer said only, Grounded Strength. Adaptive Jiu-Jitsu for Women Veterans. Below it, a line I wrote late one night and never changed. Come as you are. Leave when you're ready. I taught the basics. Movement, breath, control. How to fall. How to stand again. How to trust the floor and your own body after both have betrayed you. No belts. No ranks. Just rhythm. We began every session the same way, under my father's dog tags. I point to them, quietly. These belong to someone who never saw me fight, but he knew I would. Sometimes I'd say nothing at all, just stand there with the tags in my palm, waiting for the room to still. Then we'd begin. They came in waves after that. Word spread slow, steady like coffee seeping through cloth. A woman who hadn't left her apartment in 6 months. Another who walked with a cane and still wore her combat boots like armor. One had a service dog. One brought her teenage daughter, unsure if she belonged. I told her she did. They trained. Some fast, some careful. Some needed to sit between rounds. I let them. One night, a young woman named Talia showed up late. Her sweatshirt hung loose on her frame. Her eyes didn't meet mine. She stood at the edge of the mat, unsure. I walked over. You're welcome here, I said. She nodded. Didn't speak. Midway through drills, she froze. Her arms locked. Her breath hitched. I stepped beside her. Not touching. You're not alone, I said. Not here. She nodded again. I handed her the tags. They're yours, I said. Just for today. She didn't want to take them. I placed them gently in her palm. You'll know when to give them back. That became a ritual. Every time someone new came in shaking, unsure, I gave them the tags. And every time, without fail, they returned them. Usually not that night. Not the next. Sometimes weeks later. But they always returned them. And when they did, they stood taller. Walked steadier. One woman, Maria, wore them through her entire first month. I didn't ask. When she finally handed them back, her eyes were clear. I thought I'd lost this part of me, she whispered. Turns out I just forgot where to look. I never wrote up testimonials. Never filmed our sessions. The only record we kept was a sign-in sheet, first name only, and the soft sound of bodies moving in rhythm. Sometimes the old scar on my shoulder would throb, especially on cold nights. I welcomed it. It reminded me, pain isn't a curse. It's a witness. And we are still here. The VFW hall had no heating worth mentioning. Winters crept through the walls like memory, slow, persistent. But the women came anyway. Some nights we trained without mats. Just breath work. Slow movement. Quiet drills. I kept the lights low. The stillness helped. On Saturdays we cleared the chairs and laid out every inch of mat space. I'd arrive early, sweep the floor, boil a thermos of tea. At 8 a.m. They'd file in, each woman changed in small ways. Talia now coached the warm-up drills. She didn't ask permission. One day she just stood and started counting. No one stopped her. Another woman, Diane, brought her daughter's friend to train. The girl had never known service, but carried trauma in her walk. I said yes. We don't check credentials. We check breath. Sometimes Glenn would stop by. He never interfered. Just stood in the back, arms crossed. Watching. One afternoon he pulled me aside. You've built something, he said. They trust you. I trust them, I said. He nodded. Thinking of opening a second class. Maybe co-ed. Think carefully, he said. Not everyone earns their way in the quiet. I understood. The space stayed sacred. That winter, the VA asked me to speak on a panel. Topic: Female Leadership in Veteran Recovery. I declined the podium. Sat among them instead. They asked about resilience. I spoke about movement. They asked about PTSD. I spoke about rhythm, breath, and choosing to stay. At the end, a man raised his hand. Civilian. Shirt too crisp. What makes your program different? He asked. I looked at the floor, then back at him. We don't teach women to fight, I said. We remind them they already know how. After the panel, a woman approached me in the hallway. Late 50s. Neatly dressed. I knew your father, she said. My breath caught. She smiled softly. He talked about you often. Said you had his quiet. I nodded, throat thick. She reached into her coat, pulled out a patch. From his unit. He gave me 2. Told me the other was for you. I took it, folded it once, pressed it to my chest. Back at the hall, I pinned it beneath the flag. Just left of the dog tags. A few days later, Maria came in late, her hand in a sling. What happened? I asked. Helped a neighbor. Snowed in. Slipped on the way back. I offered to delay the session. She shook her head. I'm not here to rest. I'm here to remember who I am. We trained light that day, but she didn't miss a step. That night I locked up alone. Sat for a long time beneath the flag. Sometimes I still think about Briggs. IronCrest. The laughter. I think about the silence afterward. But I never dwell there. The mat doesn't remember who you were. Only what you bring. And now what we bring is our own. Strength doesn't shout. It doesn't puff its chest or wait for applause. Sometimes it's a woman rising from a mat without a word. Dusting herself off in front of people who laughed. Walking calmly back to her place with her spine unbroken. Sometimes it's what they don't see. The dog tags tucked into a pocket, the scar that doesn't show unless you know how to look. In Cedar Falls, they remembered my name for a moment. Briggs stopped speaking mine altogether. The gym rebranded a year later. Someone else took over. But none of that mattered. Because what remained wasn't the clip, or the takedown, or the 11 seconds of surprise. What remained was this. A room with no trophies. A space where silence speaks. A community of women who move like they've remembered something long buried. And a small flag on the wall, beneath which a pair of dog tags catch the light just so, depending on the time of day. People ask what I teach. I tell them balance maybe, breath, and how to get back up. But the truth is simpler. I remind them they were never weak, only forgotten. And sometimes the past we carry doesn't weigh us down. Sometimes, it's the witness that reminds us who we've always been.